Hello everyone and welcome back to another Kerbal Space Program video. It's been a little while, it's been about a month since my last KSP adventure, but I think I've got a pretty good one in store for you, so I hope you enjoy. In fact, actually, this is more of a proof of concept, a prototype, if you will, for a new kind of thing that I've definitely not invented, but I don't think I've ever done something like this before, and that is a single launch base. Yes, okay, I have done single launch bases before, but not to this scale. We're going to do a full-fledged colony system in one launch. By colony system, I mean a surface base with a crewed rover, a orbiting space station, which is what I'm kind of constructing at the moment, and a satellite relay network so that the orbiting station and the ground surface base can stay in contact with the Kerbal Space Center at all times. And I'm going to be sending this to Duna because Duna is just a fun old place to visit, isn't it? Especially with the new Parallax 2.0 mod that I'm running. And as you can see, if you can sort of catch that in the build time-lapse, this is going to have lots of robotics, so the whole thing is going to be nice and folded up. And then with the press of a single action button, the whole station will unfold and configure itself into the configuration that I want. So this is, again, kind of a proof of concept because I've thought about, you know, if you saw my... which one was it? It was I think it was my Parallax 2 mod showcase, in fact. My Life on Lathe bases all kind of got blowed up. I loaded the bases with Parallax 2 mod installed in the base. Didn't like that very much, and it destroyed everything. I think the rover survived, but the surface base, that's gone. And the rover mining system, that's gone too. But I did crash it. That was my fault. But yeah, maybe we could do like a reboot of Life on Lathe. But I'm not going to do like a full reboot because I've already done that. So we just do a reboot in one launch. We just launch everything. So I thought I'd test the waters and see what you guys think of a video like this, like a full-fledged colony system, so not just a surface base and potentially a rover, but the surface base, the rover, the space station, and a satellite network all in one. In fact, now I say that, maybe not Lathe, because I've done it, right? But maybe somewhere else. I think Eve is rife for the taking for this sort of thing. So there'd be an Eve base, an Eve boat, maybe, or a hovercraft or something like that, with an aeroplane or a drone or something, and a orbiting space station, possibly with a little outpost on Gilly, all in one launch. That could be kind of the next step for this. But I'd like to just see what you guys think of this, and I'd love to hear your suggestions about anything that maybe I could do to improve this concept. Like, is there anything missing? Is there a missing link here? Like maybe some other vehicle or component to the colony that I maybe didn't think of. I think one obvious thing would be some means of getting from the surface base to the orbiting space station, but I just didn't do that. So I couldn't think of an elegant way to pack that into the landing system. I mean, I guess if I'd actually put time and effort into it, I could have come up with something. But I was aware that, you know, people have been messaging me on Discord and tweeting at me saying, when's the next KSP video? And I'm stressing me out, guys. So I had to sort of, you know, set a ground rule saying, look, I need to get this video out this week because people have been asking me now for so long to make another KSP video. So I had to cut a few corners here and there to get the content out for you guys. So maybe I could make a follow-up to this video where I do a single launch colony expansion. So we do another single launch ship that basically doubles the size of the orbiting space station, possibly adds some artificial gravity to the station. That would be a nice upgrade for it. Adds another load of stuff to the surface base, maybe like a mining rig, another bigger rover, or a rover that does something different to what this one does, which is just, as you can see, drives around carrying all the science experiments on board. Possibly, what else? Something on Ike, maybe. I think what else. Oh, and obviously, you know, a means to get from the surface to the orbiting space station again. So there's a lot of things I could do with this base. Don't know if I'll actually ever act on any of those things, but they're nice things to think about, aren't they? Let me know in the comments down below if you think I should do anything that I've just said. I know I've kind of already... I haven't even launched this, and I'm already saying, yeah, guys, what should I do for the sequel to this mission that hasn't actually even launched yet? But as you can see, the construction is... pretty much nearly done. Before they get covered up by a fairing, or, you know, have gone off screen like they just have. Those two satellites at the top of the stack are the communications relays. The way you can kind of get a nice communications network with only two satellites is you have them both in very, very high orbit above the planet or moon that you want to, have a connection with. Have one in equatorial orbit and have one in polar orbit. And having them like that means that you've got a pretty reliable way of always getting in touch with Kerbin, no matter where your space station or surface base is. It's not infallible, but it does the job pretty well, and it's a pretty easy way of establishing a good connection to the Kerbal Space Center without having to establish this massive, complicated satellite network. But yeah, that's pretty much the payload of this rocket constructed. I'm just sort of strutting everything together before launching. Oh, and added some power supply units to the base as well. I did a sort of a dress rehearsal of the landing sequence for this base to make sure everything, worked. I didn't do the entire launch and film everything and then get to Duna before realizing it didn't work. So I did a quick dress rehearsal, and I realized that I didn't actually include any means of generating electricity on the surface base, which would have been disaster, basically. And same thing went for the rover, actually. So I think I might have forgotten to press record when I made that edit to the rover, but there is now a RTG clipped into the rover's, not chassis, but the little girder that forms the, I guess, quasi chassis of the rover. There's a what did I call it? An RTG? What did I call it? That's its name. There's an RTG inside that rover. And obviously the orbiting space station doesn't need an RTG. It's got some nice big solar panels to provide electrical supply. And that's pretty much the payload. Now we get on to the fun bit, which is just constructing a giant, massive booster to power this thing into space. I went a bit overboard with the interplanetary transfer stage. It's got way too much delta V. I think I just don't play KSP as frequently as I obviously used to back in day of 2021, those ancient times, and I just sort of forgot that you don't actually need that much delta V to get to Duna, so oops, a bit overkill. Everything else on this rocket, though, was pretty well measured. We don't end up ditching stages with loads of fuel remaining. So that was good. Just the nuclear stage was left a little bit overpowered. But hey, if you want to download this craft file from the description, then you can do so, and then you just have that reassurance that you have extra delta V, so you don't have to worry about trying to get your burns super accurate or anything like that, because I didn't design it properly. It's not a bug, guys, it's a feature. And here we are on the map screen. Yes, we are launching a Duna transfer window. Sing it with me if you draw a line from Kerbin to the sun to Duna. As you can see, that angle that forms at the sun should be half of a right angle. I meant 45 degrees. You guys, there's people watching this video probably that have never seen my videos before and are now really confused, but what are you going to do? Sorry, I thought I should be, quieter for when the rocket launched. There it is there. Bit of a slow start. Obviously, it's a very heavy rocket, despite the fact that we have 9 Mastodon engines, which is the equivalent of the Saturn V F1, powering this stack. It's a heavy old beast. It takes a little while to get going, but once we're off the pad, it starts to really rapidly pick up some speed. So I dropped the throttle down a little bit, because you don't want to waste all that energy just fighting the air resistance. We can just go at a nice steady pace, a little bit more fuel efficient. As we do our gravity turn over to the 45-degree mark, which I try and sort of time to be about 10 kilometers up. I don't think it matters a great deal, to be honest, but, that's just the ballpark I aim for. And actually, I think I got it a bit prematurely. But yeah, that's what I'm doing here. You can see the gimbal really having to work overtime at the base of the stack just there. I tried launching with fine controls on, so I don't know if you guys know this, but if you press caps lock in KSP, the thrust control, the thrust vectoring is much more subtle, and it just looks nicer when the video is time-lapsed. The thing isn't just twitching all over the place, but it didn't really work with this stack. It's very, very unwieldy, this rocket. It needed more immediate input, I guess, so I had to switch. But now I'm back on fine controls. You can tell when I'm on fine controls because the little roll, yaw, and pitch gauges in the bottom left of the screen, they turn blue or cyan or whatever when you're in fine control. I think it's designed for flying aircraft, although I don't like flying aircraft with those controls. I prefer using it for rockets, so a bit ironic. But then again, I am making videos, I'm making rockets and flying them for the purposes of filming and putting on YouTube, so I'm kind of thinking of different things than maybe your average player would be thinking. I'm thinking more like, oh, when this is time-lapsed, it's going to look really weird because the engine's going to be moving all over the place. So that's, there you are. Fun little bit of Matt Lowne insight, TM. Here we are. You see, it's still a bit of a beast of a second stage. We've still got 2 Mastodon engines, which are first stage engines, powering this upper stage, and it's going to get us all the way to orbit, actually. We're going to have a little bit of delta V left over in this stage. I'm not going to quite circularize with this stage because we have to protect the solar bears, don't we? We're going to ditch it just before we reach a stable orbit so that this booster will eventually decay and re-enter Kerbin's atmosphere, which, to be honest, guys, although I do this, I'm not convinced it actually works. I think once it leaves physics range, it will never actually enter Kerbin's atmosphere. You have to be, I'm doing the air quotes thing, flying the part, like have it be the focus, and you have to just time warp and just watch it decay and re-enter, otherwise it just never will. And who's got time for that, really? So this is how I get my Duna encounters. Just make a maneuver node in low Kerbin orbit, just drag it out to about 1,100 meters per second, and then just zoom out and just swing it around Kerbin's orbit, or your orbit around Kerbin, until you get that Duna encounter. Our thrust rate ratio is pretty poor, so I'm splitting the burn in two. So it was about 1,100-ish meters per second of delta V, so I'm going to, you probably saw what I did. I dragged on the retrograde marker and reduced it down to about 600 meters per second, which I'm now doing that burn here, and then we'll make another maneuver node and do the remaining 500-ish meters per second to get all the way to Duna. This is great for a couple of reasons. First of all, it actually makes the time you're spending doing the burn shorter because it's a more efficient way of doing things, because we're maximizing the use of the O-berth effect, and it just makes the video a bit better, right? Because you're just not spending as long staring at me doing the burn. Here we are, just warping around, getting ready to execute burn 2 of 2. And here we go. Am I going to leave the map screen? This is why I don't usually talk about the footage directly, because it ends up just me going up, here we go, up, a little bit of a wobble, up, a little bit of a, yeah, exactly. You get the point. In case you're wondering how I'm able to do physics time warp faster than ×4, which is what I'm using to do these big long burns, I'm using the mod Better Time Warp. It allows you to do faster than 4 times physics time warp. I find that anything after 10 times normal speed, it just becomes very glitchy, and the Kraken's going to rip your craft apart. So ×10 is the max, at least for big complicated ships like this. I have used faster than 10 times when doing things like burns using ion engines, which are very, very, very long, but those are always quite small and simple ships. So you can go faster than 10 times, do it at your own risk, though. So here we are, just getting our Duna encounter equatorial by doing a mid-course correction burn. Very, very cheap, only 6.3 meters per second, and it's a few days away. Let's say 68 days. I can't really see, my preview screen is quite low resolution, but it's a long old way. Not for us, though. We can just time warp and overshoot, obviously, and then execute the burn. You don't have to worry too much about overshooting or undershooting your mid-course correction burns. I very rarely just follow the maneuver node exactly. I tend to just look at the map screen and just terminate the burn when I get the orbit that I want. And now we can, of course, make a maneuver node to circularize our orbit at Duna, because aero braking is for noobs. We do not need to use aero braking, and I brought way too much fuel, and I somehow need to justify why I brought so much fuel. It doesn't matter, I'm still going to end up with, we haven't even used half of our fuel reserves, and we're already entering the sphere of influence of our destination. And our destination is right there. There it is, Duna. I had nothing else to say, actually. I thought I thought I would be hit with some inspiration and give you a really nice, heartwarming and motivational story about Duna, but I have not got that. Here we are, performing our circularization burn. Similar to our Kerbin escape burn, I'm splitting this in two, just because if we spend so long burning at periapsis to lower our apoapsis, we'll end up we won't be able to get it perfectly circularized in one burn anyway, basically. I noticed here, by the way, that I hadn't got communications network enabled, which was a bit of an oops. I had just created a brand new save just for this mission, so sorry guys, I used cheats to just unlock the tech tree. I have unlocked the tech tree. I wanted to do this in my Lowne aerospace save, but honestly, I've just started making new save files for every single KSP mission I do now, because, oh, actually, I'm going to talk about this quickly. I wanted to make sure I just created a maneuver node and didn't do anything to my orbit. I just cycled through the next few orbits to make sure I wouldn't be encountering Ike anytime soon. And I think we're a good 3 or 4 orbits away from encountering Ike, so it was fine, because I didn't want to get flung off into space or crash into Ike or something else while I was doing this. We're going to have just leave the colony ship for a second and deploy our communication satellites. So here we are. we're going to pop one into, like I say, high equatorial orbit and one into high polar orbit. I'll show you kind of how they work at the end of this video once everything else is established. But yeah, that be the plan. So we're going to just make sure it burn radial out quickly just to make sure we don't crash back into the space station. And then raise our apoapsis to be a nice high height. Also making sure that we're not going to encounter Ike at any point. Ike's sphere of influence is really, really big. So you've got to be super careful about doing anything in an orbit that isn't low Duna orbit, basically, because Ike could well just fling you off into deep space, or worse, cause you to crash into Duna or crash into Ike. Don't want that, basically. So a good trick you can do is just create a maneuver node on your desired orbital path, and then just click the skip orbit button a few times without actually modifying the planned orbit, and that will just tell you if you're going to encounter us. See what I'm doing here? Yeah? No encounters with Ike at all for the next sort of 10 orbits, which means we're probably going to be safe at this orbital altitude. So that's how I made sure that my orbits were safe. Did I do it again for this one? I don't think I did. Or maybe I already did and I wasn't looking at the screen. I daydream sometimes when I'm doing these commentaries if it wasn't obvious by how chaotic the commentary is. Anyway, I interrupted myself earlier. I've started just making like new save files for missions these days because I feel like, and I know it's not just me because I've talked to other KSP YouTubers, and I think just people who play KSP in general have also noticed this, that the more missions you have in a save file, so if you've got a space station in low Kerbal orbit and something on the Mun and something here, there, everywhere, it causes the game to just slow down. Loading quick saves is slower, loading the save file is slower, frame rate's not as good. I don't know, and I just can't be bothered anymore, you know? So now I just create a new save every time I do a mission. And the other reason I do this is because I have to restart the game quite a lot now. If you ever see me making quick saves in videos, it's not really because I need to. It's because I'm constantly having to Alt F4 the game and then restart it because of that sound bug, which I've been told it's something to do with waterfall, or it's something to do with better time warp, or it's just something innate with KSP 1.12, whatever the last version is. Something happens, so the sounds all stop working and the engines don't make noise. I think parachutes work weirdly and a couple of other things work, but most of the sounds stop working until you Alt F4 the game and restart it. If anyone knows the fix to this that doesn't involve removing better time warp or waterfall, because I don't want to do that, then let me know. Yeah, see here? The engines aren't making any noise, so I will be restarting the game in a second so that the engines will have noise again, but for now we have to just sit here in silence. Well, I mean, not silence, you got my voice, but it would be nice to have that ambiance in the background. But yes, we are rapidly approaching our first big thing to do when it comes to assembling the colony system. I mean, I guess we've already done the relay network, which was kind of a big thing. And also I spoke too soon. I need to get my orbit circularized. I went with about 70 kilometers because that just nice round number. The altitude line, what's it called? The Kármán line. I know, yes, Kármán line's Earth, whatever. You guys all know what I mean. People who write that comment, have some nuance. It's 20 kilometers above the Kármán line for Duna, which is 50 kilometers, and yeah, and also it's like that's Kerbin's Kármán line. So isn't that nice? Anyway, let's start separating these ships out. So go deploy that interstage fairing there that's protecting the satellite dish of the ground station, and then we can. Oh, I started just choking up for some reason. I don't know what happened there. Yes, now we can separate the two craft together, and then we can hit that action group, which I think is bound to action group number 7, and that just unfolds the base. Now you can see the side bits, those what are they called, laboratory modules, habitation modules, whatever, don't clip through the main body of the station like they used to in my old unfolding station. We've got those pistons that then sink them into place. Okay, yeah, there's a bit of part clipping now, but I mean, for the most part, I thought that was pretty satisfying to watch, to be honest. Now, I deliberately have an engineer on both the ground station module and the space station module because I just don't trust the Kraken to not ruin my plans and just rip this thing to shreds. So I'm just going to strut all the moving parts in place now so that they can't move again, and this is going to stay in this will be the final configuration of the station. It's not going to move again. Probably not a completely bulletproof strategy, but I think it should. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't work, so I'm going to just go ahead and assume it will. There we are. So if you do this mission, you want to make sure that there's an engineer on board both the orbiting station and the ground station modules. Unless, of course, you just want to live dangerously and trust Lowne Aerospace's designs to be immune to the Kraken, which, to be honest, guys, risky strategy. I have noticed as well that I didn't do a good job with some of the docking port placements on those side compartments. I see that there are solar panels blocking them. So luckily, we have an engineer that can get out and remove them and weld them on somewhere else. So yeah, definitely bring an engineer on this mission, it turns out. You might have seen a little crossfade there to allow me to switch to the ground station. And also, hey, can you hear that? We have sound again. I restarted the game, so now we have sound for probably the most exciting part of this mission, which is the deployment of the ground station. So you may have noticed it's a slightly precarious setup here. We have the ground station on the top of the stack, and then the rover on the bottom. And obviously the rover, I mean, it might be able to support the weight of the ground station, but I would worry that it's going to damage its wheels in the process. So what we're going to do is we're just going to, I guess, coast our way down until the main parachutes deploy. The rover has parachutes on it, but we haven't deployed those ones yet. We've just deployed the parachutes of the main space station, and I probably should have done this in the vehicle assembly building, but I'm just adjusting the deployment altitudes to be as high as possible for those main chutes, because we want to give ourselves as much time to do a couple of things. The first thing will be to drop the rover, let it get nice and far away from the falling space station before the rover deploys its own parachutes to touch down. And we also need to configure the ground station into its landing setup. You can see the landing legs are up really high on the sides because, much like the space station, we've got some unfolding arms that have the habitation modules, things like that. So those need to be unfolded. We need to get a Kerbal engineer out on EVA to strut everything together. So yeah, we wanted to give ourselves as much time to do all of that. Here you can see me dropping the rover. Duna's atmosphere is very thin, so parachutes don't work quite as well as they do on Kerbin, hence why I've got so many parachutes. I've also got those landing legs on the rover. We don't need those landing legs for any aspect of the rover's operation, but it's just there so that those landing legs take the brunt of the impact, not the wheels. I just was worried the wheels might break on impact because we're coming down at a fair old pace, because you can see 9 meters per second. Those landing legs can take that sort of impact. I wasn't sure if those wheels would be able to, but as you can see, it all worked fine. There is the rover all touched down. Now we get to do the exciting, dangerous part. Here we are. The footage is playing back at accelerated speed. This happened at slightly slower in real time. We can get our Kerbal out on EVA and quickly strut everything together. The strut's a little bit glitchy with the struts there. I think it's because the whole apparatus is moving about, so the UI doesn't really know what to do. But there we are. The ground station is ready to land, and I realize we're about to come straight on top of the rover, so I quickly move the rover out of the way. And yeah, just had a second to fire up the engines to make sure we didn't break anything on touchdown. And there we are. It's okay. This place is all right, but it could be better. I want it to be somewhere a little bit flatter, so I just decided to do a very safe relocation of the surface base. I see there's like a line in the textures just there in the background. I figured, oh, that must be a fairly flat spot because two textures collide here, and I was right. So that's why it was a very quick decision I had to make whilst in the air. As you might imagine, the base doesn't fly that well. It's not the most graceful flying machine out there. But yeah, I think this is actually a pretty nice spot. It's a pretty flat region. Can be hard to find flat spots. Hey, look at that. In the top left of the screen, I mean, you might, it was there, it's gone now. There it is, top left of the screen, there's like a little sand dune, which is part of the breaking ground surface features thing. So we can do some scans of it with the scanning arm of this rover. As you can see, it does ping off a little bit from the rocks. I made a rover video of Duna not that long ago with the Parallax 2 mod, which suffered from similar problems of pinging off. Very safe deployment of those landing boosters. It featured similar problems where the rover just pinged off everything, and people suggested in the comments to disable all the SAS wheels and stuff, and that would stop that from happening. So that's what I did with the SAS wheels inside the what's it called, the command pod of the rover. It didn't really fix the problem, unfortunately. So if anyone does know a solution, I don't think there is one. I think it's just KSP's physics are a bit janky, aren't they? Now I'm going to do one of my favorite things. My favorite things to do in this game. And that is just deploy some ground, what are they called? Surface, breaking ground, surface things. I don't know what they're called. But like the science experiment and solar panels, etc. I didn't show the entirety of the placement of all of that because it would have been very boring to watch the entire thing. But there you are. I think it looks pretty nice. It looks pretty cute. I'm only doing this for the aesthetics, right? Like, I don't need the science because, as I mentioned, I cheated, guys, to unlock everything. So, we don't need it. It just looks cool. And actually, that goes for pretty much every surface base in Kerbal Space Program, isn't it? You know, you don't need them, but they're pretty cool things to build. And it gets you hyped. Gets me hyped for Kerbal Space Program 2. I'm just now mentioning that this far into the commentary. I kind of got inspired to get back into KSP 1 a little bit after all the hype around KSP 2's release date being in February. I've taken some annual leave off work for that week, so guys, don't delay it again. I've taken vacation leave, holiday leave, so I can pump out some videos for you guys. So yeah. Okay, here we are. I just did a crossfade. Oh. So I always recommend putting SAS wheels on rovers, even though they don't need them and you should disable them for general use. If the rover capsizes, you can just flip it back up by enabling the SAS wheels. And here we are, doing a little scan of this little sand dune here. We can actually move the camera around and have a look at our Kerbals inside. There they are. This is some video editing, by the way. Don't ask me how I was able to do this. I did this through video editing. Here we are. We've gathered our science there. Goodbye, Kerbals. Goodbye. And yeah, we can just do our other science experiments as well and get our scientist out on EVA to not only restore the Science Junior and Mystery Goo Science Experiment Unit, but also recover all of the science from all the experiment units. Blah, 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 blah. I'm just getting excited, guys, because it's the end of the commentary, and I'm just frantically thinking if there's anything I should have mentioned about this craft or the design process or anything like that, while I was instead talking about something completely irrelevant to whatever was on screen. But I don't think there is. I think I covered everything pretty comprehensively. Yeah, I'm actually, this was a really satisfying mission to pull off, in my opinion. And yeah, I think I can definitely see myself doing another one of these single launch colonies to somewhere. Maybe somewhere I've not visited in a while. Oh, we've run over a Kerbal. Luckily, it was all fine. Those spacesuits really are made of something else, aren't they? Yeah, we can get our Kerbal out and do a quick look around, a little majestic. Maybe this will be the thumbnail shot, maybe, I don't know, but there's a nice little ending shot to say goodbye to our surface base antics. But yeah, I think I've really enjoyed this mission. I can definitely see myself doing something like this again, maybe on a grander scale, or maybe something a bit more focused, like this was just a general science expedition, right? Oh, by the way, I'm just showing this here as a showcase of how the space station stays in contact even when it's occluded by Duna. You can see that once we go behind the planet, it can then ping on to one of the 2 orbiting satellites to maintain a constant connection to the Kerbal Space Center. So there we are. That's that part of the mission there. But is there anything you want to see in terms of like a single launch colony? Or is there anything you think I could improve upon with this? I'd really like to try something like this with Eve. Eve might be tricky when it comes to building a craft that can go to and from the surface base and the space station with ease. Might have to involve some sort of Kraken drive to make it feasible. But, you know, would that be something you'd want to see? Let me know. And hey, speaking of things to see, there's some names on screen. They're my patrons and channel members. If you want to join their magnificent ranks, you can do so by clicking the link in the description or via the card on screen. And there's 2 video suggestions as well. One of them is a Planet Coaster video, and they're not getting many views. I don't know if I'm going to carry on with the series, to be honest. It's really tanking my channel's analytics, but whatever, it's there if you want to watch it. Hope you enjoyed this video, guys. And yeah, let me know in the comments down below what you think. Goodbye.